Hi, I'm Paul Heaney, Editorial Director for Design World Magazine. We're here for NI Week, Day 1 in beautiful Austin, Texas, and I'm joined by some members of the Design World editorial staff, Senior Editor Miles Budimir, Senior Editor Barb Schmitz, Contributing Editor Steve Meyer. So thanks for joining us here. Let me start off talking a little bit about the keynote. Great opening keynote, as always, here at NI Week. A lot of talk from Dr. T about the Internet of Things, or cyber physical systems, as NI likes to call that, that topic. A big focus on, I would say, timing and synchronization issues. Seems like that's going to be a continuing trend all week that we'll hear about. NI is really leveraging their nanosecond timing, which is about a 200-time improvement over the cycle times from earlier part of the 2000s, let's say. We saw the next LabVIEW 2014 release today. We heard about some really interesting increases in bandwidth relating to PXI, and a little bit surprisingly, we even saw a new NI semiconductor test system unveiled, which I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about here. Application stories, pretty interesting stuff from Continental Tires, Jacobs, Brains Inc., Duke Energy, and even Case New Holland. Again, we'll hear more about that. One of the interesting technical sessions I sat in today had to do with the connected car, which, you know, everyone's talking about the Google car and everything, but there's a lot of interesting things surrounding that technology. We had speakers from IBM, Intel, and Bosch in on the session. Pretty interesting discussion about how consumers are going to want to download a lot of things, kind of update their cars, as you will, with different apps. And that's really kind of a sea change in how the automotive industry in general has operated for most of its lifetime. It's really going to force, I think, the industry to become a little more dynamic. It's not just that you engineer it and get the heck out and it's no longer your problem. It's just not the norm in the automotive space today. They really want to encourage people to experiment with new business models. One example was, hey, you're going to have all these millions of cars connected to the cyber physical system with data on, hey, there's a new pothole here. Maybe someone creates a new company, sells that data to government agencies. So no one really knows what things are going to work, what's not going to work, so it's kind of a real Wild West out there. So let's go down the line and you can each talk a little bit about what you found interesting today from Day 1 at NI Week. Miles?
Okay. Thanks. Well, actually, I just sat in on a session with Airbus, and they were talking about what they're doing in their factories and in their plants. And one of the things which was interesting, because as you mentioned, the whole Internet of Things has been a big buzzword kind of thing. They actually talked about the intranet of things. How basically it's nice that we can hook up all these instruments and all these things all over the world, but for our purposes, we don't want everything hooked up. We just want what's in the factory basically hooked up. And they've talked about how NI and how LabVIEW also helps them get to that point. I guess one of the other interesting things too was that they also talked about how LabVIEW helps them to customize HMIs, human machine interfaces, GUIs, that kind of thing. Where one of the other big buzzwords is big data, that you're going to have so much data, and we've got all this data coming in. And one of the questions I think some people ask is, well, what are we going to do with all this data, or how is it going to all fit in? How are we going to process it? So what they're doing is they're looking at taking steps to basically customize panels and things like that to only what the user needs to basically finish the task that they need to do, which is kind of interesting because it seems to kind of run counter to one image of we're going to have all this data, we're just going to be swimming in data, we don't know what to do with it. So they're kind of taking a little different tack and saying, well, how can we use that to increase our or make our factory run smoother, make it more flexible, make it more customizable even, which is a very interesting kind of use of LabVIEW's of LabVIEW basically, I think so. Barb,
all right.
I think I'll pass it to you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Hi, I think one of the coolest things that I saw was actually during the keynote, one of the LabVIEW users, Dr. John Lloyd, who's a principal at a company called Brain Inc. He's doing drop tests of football helmets, or actually he works with all type of different helmets to improve the safety of helmets. And I just thought that was fascinating because, you know, he basically has tested a lot of the helmets that are currently being used and has found that they offer absolutely no protection against rotational impact. Apparently most injuries, concussions, which obviously it's a big topic now about how many athletes are suffering concussions and the long-term effects of them, those aren't caused by blunt impact, which is what the current helmets are actually tested for. Those are caused by rotational impact, and so the new helmet that he has designed will reduce the rotational impact, and then obviously reduce injuries by like 50%. So he was very interesting. It was also interesting because he's seeing a lot of resistance. The helmet manufacturers aren't really interested in talking to him. The safety associations aren't very interested in talking to him because basically that's admitting that what the current technology that they're using is not sufficient. So, but I thought that was very interesting, and it applies to all different ski helmets, biking helmets. So it's interesting. One other interesting thing I'll add before I pass the baton here is he said football helmets, they don't need the plastic on the outside, that all the protection is actually inside. So the old leather helmets, that he said going back to something like that would actually be safer than what they're currently using. So I thought that was very interesting. All right, I'll pass it along.
Thank you. I participated in one of the sessions regarding the what I'll call the next generation of control that's coming from National Instruments. National Instruments is beginning to focus on a new product line called Single Board Rio, where they're taking their classic control platform and re-architecting it from a physical standpoint initially, reducing the size and the package complexity. And at the same time, they're expanding the capability of the platform because they're giving users the ability in LabVIEW to customize the FPGA and really customize all the elements within the control system. They're also driving the cost, size, and package even further than what they have now in the current 9096 single board Rio. So I think what we're going to see from National Instruments over the next few years is basically a platform that can be applied almost universally to any type of machine control application. And of particular interest, the cost threshold for implementing this platform. They have actually surveyed users, surveyed OEMs who've developed products with this platform, and they're getting them done in half the time with less than half the manpower. So it's a huge cost saving, and that will only accelerate the application of this platform in the future. Paul, back to you.
Thank you. Well, as always, there's a lot to digest here at NI Week. Please join us again tomorrow for another update, and we'll let you know what we see, what we hear. And as always, you can visit www.designworldonline.com and click on videos for a lot more videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.